Well, our podcast, I think we've settled on a name. Emotional Men. Is that what we're going with?
Emotional Men Podcast.
There we go.
I feel good about that.
It feels good to me too. And then if it's bad, we can delete that or bleep it out. I'm going to close this window here so that I don't look quite as shadowy. There we go. I'm looking even more dope. Why did I say that? That was a dumb thing to say.
That was like 1997.
Yeah, looking fresh.
That was pretty
proper.
Dope. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh man, you just said something.
Correct.
About you feel good about that. Shoot. You're gonna have to bleep that up. That part too. Brain farts don't hold well in podcasts.
We're killing it, Pete. That's the takeaway is right now when it comes to podcasting, we're just killing it.
The top of the game. You know, I have. I'm not a practicing therapist anymore, being in school, but I remember having people in my office and we would talk about depression or trauma or vulnerability or whatever, and I would have a spiel. I'd get into, like, I have my education, and a lot of therapy would be like, hey, here's the understanding of the diagnosis, or like, here's a way to understand trauma for you. Does this jive with your understanding of trauma? That kind of thing. But I could basically talk, and I'd have these sound bites that go on about 30 seconds, and I'd use a whiteboard, and I'd get into like a teaching mode. Mm-hmm. But I find that I think that as we tread into interesting new waters, I have opinions and I know about them, but I don't have sound bites. This is stuff that I'm like thoughts that you and I are exploring, which is really interesting. Yeah, I don't have
I'm okay with that.
Formulated responses for a lot of this stuff.
Well, good. That's good. I call them pillars. I have the same thing. There are certain topics that I just have a little spiel, and I'll tell my clients too, like, this is one of my pillars of there's this. I think we talked the don't should your pants. We mentioned last time. Like, that's one of my big pillars. Don't tell yourself you need to feel bad because of, use it as an invitation. But I've got others that I'm sure will pop up. But I will say that for the most part, I'm kind of in the same boat where I don't necessarily have, pre-cooked meals to serve you about these topics.
A lot of good therapy is all self-discovery too. Exactly.
Not that this is us doing therapy on ourselves, but I'm open to the exploration.
Why am I paying you $200 an hour then?
Oh, are you saying you wouldn't pay me that if? Okay, well, welcome to your therapy, Pete.
No,
I will expect the payment. $200 is a lot of money.
You're worth it, Taylor.
Oh, thanks, buddy. My rate is not $200 an hour. Wow, I actually know somebody who is, but he has a PhD and is very good at his job. So there you
go. Well, speaking of shooting your pants. Today we were going to talk about basically perfectionism. We're going to talk about 80-20. I had never heard the term 80-20, the 80-20 rule, until you had put that down as a possible topic. So why don't you take that? Why don't you explain what you mean by that?
It's a thing I made up that means nothing. So I was talking to... It means something. Everything means something, Pete. I was talking to a buddy of mine. We went out to lunch, a guy named Alex Navarez, who does marketing. And we were talking about the experience of living in Austin or something. And at the time, I was like, oh, it's so hot. I want to get out of here. And he's like, Taylor, when I was dating people, he's like, I had to remind myself constantly about the 80-20 rule. I said, well, what's that? He goes, well, in my relationship, 80% of it was fantastic and I loved it and I had no complaints and I wanted it to be that way. The problem was there was 20% that I wasn't happy with. And I'd look at other people and I'd look for the same 20% and I'd go, but that 20% for them isn't a problem, so they must be 100% okay. And so when he was younger, he'd break up with the one person, go to the next person, and that 20% would in fact not be a problem, but there'd be a different 20%. And he came to realize that there's always going to be a 20%. There's no way to get away from it. And so once he accepted the 20% and focused on the 80% as a good thing, that's how he was able to stay happy in a relationship, stay committed to it. Yeah, so that's the 80-20% in a nutshell as it relates to mental health. It's called there's some principle. It starts with a P, I forget. But the bigger concept of the 80-20 rule is that 80% of content comes from 20% of people. 80% of things to deal with come from 20% of action, essentially. So this isn't quite a one-to-one with the 80-20 rule, but for our purposes, the 80-20 rule is 80% is good, 20% is bad. Make your peace.
That's awesome. I had just read something that talked about long-term marriages, and it said the perspective of the partners was fundamental in how long the relationship was going to last. If you have a pet peeve with your partner, they're not doing something, and you think to yourself, if I influence their behavior, we can just change that. Like, they'll get better. If they consider their problem as transient and they can fix them, those relationships were weaker and they didn't last as often. However, if the perspective of the partner was accepting of whatever they found problematic, like they always leave their clothes on the couch, and they figure that that's just the way it is. That's just the way it's going to be with this partner, and they can accept the fault and live with it. They can be annoyed with it. Maybe not accept it is the right term, but you know what I mean. They basically don't expect that thing to change. Don't expect it to change. It's just part of the relationship. Those relationships were actually stronger.
I'm not surprised to hear that. One of my pillars, speaking of pillars, boom. One of my pillars is that generally speaking, life is not about avoiding problems, because that's a fool's errand. There's always going to be problems. Life is much better served if you can pick the problems you're willing to deal with. And what that looks like in practice is exactly what you talked about. Like, do I want my problem to be that I'm with this person who leaves their dirty clothes on the bathroom floor and farts at inopportune times? I don't know. But what I buy with that problem is I get my best friend to be with me and I get to share a life with this person. Do I want that to be my problem, or do I want my problem to be that I don't have dirty clothes on the bathroom floor, I don't have someone farting at inopportune times, but the problem that I'm buying, or the problem that I'm choosing, is that I don't have this person in my life? If you frame it that way, if I'm willing to pick this problem, then it's so much easier to have a realistic approach to life. I understand this is going to be a problem. I'm not surprised that it's a problem. And this problem, I think, really crucially is not proof of failure. It's just proof of reality.
So how does that equate to treatment of yourself? Not equate, but relationally to yourself. It seems like what we're talking about today is the inability to accept those things.
The inability to let go of the 20?
Right. And I was going to read a definition from a chapter. So in 2018, there was a book called The Psychology of Perfectionism, Theory, Research, and Applications. In Chapter 12, Rice and Davis wrote the chapter titled Perfectionism and Emotional Regulation. Their definition of perfectionism is a personality construct that involves two dimensions. First, you have personal strivings, like you have your standards, you have your performance evals, you have your personal endeavors, you have the things that you can control and you move towards, and that's bordering on obsession, depending on how bad it is. And second, concerns about the adequacy of those strivings. A lot of self-critique, a lot of persistent self-evaluation, etc. They highlighted the fact that perfectionism is not inherently a bad thing. We have tied perfectionism with stress together, and I can get into that empirically later. But we naturally say, "Oh, you're such a perfectionist," as if to say, "Oh, you're stressing yourself out." Like those two phrases have become synonymous, but they are not. Perfectionism, as they said, is both adaptive and maladaptive. It depends on how you use it. As with all things, really. I think all drugs have a purpose. And this particular
heroin?
thing...
Like, what do you mean?
Oh, like opiates.
Oh, you were literally talking about heroin.
Yeah, exactly. exactly. I'd say all drugs have a purpose. So, and I also say that everybody has everything. So to say that perfectionism is bad and we should get away from it is terribly reductive. You need to.
Okay.
It's can be adaptive, and there are some interesting studies that talk about the adaptive nature of perfectionism. Possibly, there's research that needs to be done, but it's a fascinating.
I'm kind of curious. You said all people have everything. What does that mean?
So if you've ever felt your phone buzz in your pocket, and you check your phone and there's no notification, it didn't buzz, that's schizophrenia. If you, yeah, that's schizophrenia. So it's a hallucination. So if you hear your name being called in a crowded room, you turn and nobody said your name. It's an audio hallucination, and buzzing in your pocket is a tactile hallucination. If you become obsessed about a certain thing that has to be done a certain way, that could be some kind of
OCD.
Yeah, OCPD or autism trait or whatever. It all becomes muddled. But
Quick question, by the way,
Yeah.
for people who don't know, obsessive compulsive disorder is the OCD. What does the P stand for in OCPD?
Personality disorder. So
Okay.
OCPD is it's not right because OCPD is like it needs to be this way because I say so, because I'm me. OCD is I need to do this or else something bad will happen. Like I need to walk around my car 3 times or else I'm going to run over a cat. That's OCD because something's going to die. OCPD is like when all your pencils are in a row and they're color-coded in a line. It's not because you're going to lose them. It's just because that's the way it has to be because I'm me. You know.
Gotcha.
So it's a personality thing. Anyway, we all have everything. We all have everything. So
Actually, it makes me curious, Pete. I know I did this when I was in grad school. When you got your master's degree, did you have your weekly disease that you realized that you had? Like, oh, I'm totally bipolar because...
educatinitis or whatever they called it. Schoolitis. It's whatever you're learning at the time.
Yeah, which is why I'm such a not big fan of, and this is an entire tangential thing we don't have to get into today, but like the TikTok self-diagnostics of like, well, I have this.
Oh,
I mean, you have criteria met by that, but that doesn't mean you have it. There's a lot more stuff to consider.
Exactly. I had no joke. I had a patient come into my office once and ask me about the diagnostic criteria for borderline personality disorder because they don't like the color orange.
What?
Yeah, they'd seen something on TikTok that had said something like, if you have an aversion to these colors, if you use these type of phrases in your language, you could be borderline. And so,
oh my goodness,
we were already working together. Like she and I had a relationship, but she was like, "Oh, by the way, this thing." And I'm like, "What? Let's pull out the DSM. Here's what this means."
I mean, I'm really glad that she felt comfortable saying that, and like, I'm not. This isn't me saying like what's wrong with her for being so dumb. It's more like, wow, can you imagine just being that afraid? Like, I might be borderline because I like the color orange. That's a scary thought that doesn't need to exist in anybody's head because that's a dumb thought for someone to put into the world.
I'd mentioned before some interesting research that was being done on perfectionism, and I know I'm kind of going too far, but once you got me on a rabbit hole, I was just on a roll. So this is really your fault. So there's a possible link between perfectionism and...
Take responsibility for yourself, Pete.
Hey, I didn't ask to be on this podcast.
That is a very fair point. That is a fair point.
I just obsess about it all week and come up with lit reviews and log in early.
Well, the good thing is that at least you're not trying to get a PhD at the same time, and this is in no way, shape, or form intrusive.
I come here to get away from that. So the theory was that children use some aspects of perfectionism to self-soothe in systems that have unclear expectations or in systems with unrelentingly demanding expectations. In any case, it has been empirically shown that parenting has an impact on later aspects of perfectionism.
Let's pretend for just a moment, Pete, that I'm blonde. Okay. What?
All right, so the attachment theory is like people's psychology is really affected by early relationships, usually to mom, to aunts and uncles, whoever. But attachment theory traces people's, sometimes, if you're deep into attachment theory, traces their psychoses back to early relationships. And what did you learn as a child about yourself and about the world and about other people?
And real quick, pointing out too that when people talk about attachment styles, this is what they're talking about.
Yes.
They're talking about the idea that the way you connect with people is influenced specifically by what you were exposed to as a child in terms of relationships.
Yes, and they have whole classifications of different types of attachments that you can form. But in this speculation, in this theory, they said that if you're a child with in an unstable environment, like kids that I worked with who had to do the laundry or else the laundry wouldn't get done. They were what we say parentified. They were cast into a unstable place that they were responsible for themselves and maybe a younger brother or sister, and they had to take care of everything. They were scared about food being in the house. Speaking from my experience with kids, they would walk to neighbors' houses and ask them for food or ask for a ride to the grocery store, and take loads of laundry down to the laundromat, do it themselves, and they're like 12, 10 years old, doing this thing for the household while their parents are elsewhere.
It makes me feel so sad.
It's a very sad thing. So these kids, this one older sister that I remember, and her brother was probably 3 or 4, and she loved him dearly, and she got into the child care government system, or how I started treating her. But she was very parentified, and she had to be a perfectionist in a lot of things. So the theory here was that it hasn't been investigated, but it's been indicated through other studies, is a way to self-soothe in systems that have unclear expectations. What am I supposed to be doing right now? Do I go to school? My parents don't care if I go to school. My teachers care if I go to school, so what's the expectation? Is school a maybe thing, or is it a yes, absolute thing? You know what? I decide that I will go to school every single day without fail. That makes the expectation easy to follow. It's black and white. And for a little kid who thinks in black and white, that is easy. So they become a perfectionist about education. Or you have to give little brother a bath every other day. That's a rule, hard and fast rule. So you create these perfectionist expectations on yourself in order to deal with the instability of your environment.
Mm-hmm. And then when you don't, I imagine it creates an incentivizing thought process of, there's a real consequence if I don't. And you know, especially as a little kid, the consequences are always so big and scary because the world is so outside of your control that if I don't go to school perfectly, if I don't give my little brother a bath perfectly, then I have failed and people will find out and I will lose this stability. And that's bad.
Yes, exactly. Any stability that you thought you may have had, you'll lose. Yeah, it's working with kids. When I got into the field, I thought I will not work with kids. Like I can't handle it. I just emotionally I can't handle working with kids because of all the reasons. And then I found you could go into that, but they're not good. I think about their parents and I think about society in general and the government system, and it's all full of frustration. So
to be kind about it.
Yeah. So you're working with this kid for an hour a week. You have 1 hour a week with this person, this small person who has so little control, and you try to give them as much empathy and understanding and truth that you can shove into their brains in an hour. And that's all they get that week. Anyway.
Yeah.
It's really hard. And then I went into community mental health, and I saw them all the time. I worked in the kids section.
You know what? Like, we were kind of talking about this before we started, but our kind of view on, not to be political, but our view on politics. And I feel like being a therapist is a really, really good way to understand what welfare is actually like. And man, at least for me, like I had so much more sympathy for people on welfare after doing this job for a year. People who
exactly.
It is not great in any way at all. And people who are doing it effectively and who use the system well work literal miracles, and I have all the respect and admiration in the world for some of these people that I work with.
The cutoffs are hard. There's not a lot of gradual in and outs. It's a lot of like you're on or off, and that leaves a lot of people high and dry and dependent on welfare, because it's like if you live in a food desert, you have to travel an hour and a half to get to a grocery store or something, and how do you afford bus fare? Yeah, for example, in Kansas, inmates it is illegal for an inmate to have a bank account. And when you,
Really?
yeah, you can't have a bank account while you're in jail. So when you leave jail, and you are now a convict on parole or whatever, they give you a check for $100. What do you do with that?
That's it?
Yeah. And what do you do with that? With a check, usually.
You put it in the bank.
Yeah, exactly. They can't have a bank account. So they're basically homeless with this little piece of paper that has the number 100 written on it. And they're scrambling, and that first 2 weeks out of jail is like you either sink or swim. And so,
yeah, if you don't have somebody to keep you safe off the street, you go straight back to where you were.
Yeah, exactly, because you don't have a bank account. You don't know where to get a bank account. You don't. People get rejected because you just got out of jail. Like, no, we're not going to cash your check and open up a checking account. That kind of thing. So you have to have like banks with big hearts, or some kind of credit union or something.
As we all know, banks generally have the biggest of hearts.
Well, the point is, the welfare system and the way that we treat the vulnerable people in our population is not as easy to is not easy to dismiss when you're in it.
Yeah, this is another, to continue this tangent just a little bit, but I think it's an important consideration as well. I worked with a woman in Seattle who was a grandmother, and I cannot and will not go into details, obviously, but I will say that one time she's like, I have a job that I can't work more than 10 hours a week at, because if I do, I no longer qualify for any of these services. They tried to offer me a raise. I had to turn it down because if I make a quarter an hour more, 25 cents more an hour, I lose all of my benefits. And the difference between going from working 10 hours a week, making X minus 25 cents, to working 11 hours a week or working 10 hours a week plus 25 cents an hour, to lose everything. No help with food, no help with transportation, no help with getting services for your grandchildren, no help for getting services for yourself. How do you survive? I mean, preaching to the choir.
Yeah. And so it's funny that our in other ways our political views may be different, and yet you and I both experience the same thing, and we got to shrug in the same ways.
Yeah.
Just kind of wanted to jump in here real quick and say that I accidentally pushed a button when we were recording this, and I didn't realize it, and my voice went from being kind of loud to being crazy loud. So, sorry that I'm bad at this.
I think that based on what you were talking about, good clap. Well, what you're talking about with the with kids and all that kind of brings up the important thing that I know a lot of people really struggle with when I talk to them about it, which is this idea that anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. Like, a lot of people be like, no, it has to be done the right way or there's no purpose in doing it. To which I say, is it better for you to never take a shower or to take a shower once a week? Well, they say, well, once a week. That's right, because it's worth doing well, so it's worth doing poorly. Is it better to never brush your teeth or to brush your teeth every 4 days? Well, it's better to brush your teeth every 4 days. That's right, because anything worth doing well is worth doing poorly.
Anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. Yep. I remember thinking that when I was at some service project, and a dad had his son, and the son was swinging an axe, and the dad kept saying, "Get over here and finish. Anything worth doing is worth doing well. Anything worth doing is worth doing well. Come do that." And he said it several times, where I thought, the kid is doing it. So maybe it's like his definition of what is well is what's bothering me. But I thought about it for a long time until I ran into this. Anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. And I thought, if there's a behavioral technique, use it for the theory is humans are trained this way, but you train anything with this, and it's called molding. And it's when the animal starts to approximate the behavior you want, you reward it. Like, I saw it happen with a German Shepherd or a Husky. They wanted to teach it how to close cabinet doors. And when it looked at the cabinet, they gave it a treat. And it looked at the cabinet, they gave it a treat. And then it looked, and they didn't give him a treat. And he looked, and then he touched it with his nose, and they gave him a treat. And then he touched it with his nose and gave him a treat. So you mold the behavior until finally he started pushing it slightly, and they gave him lots of treats. And he pushes it more, and they finally closes it, and they go crazy, and they, good job, good boy. And so I think if you are a human animal and you tell yourself no, only do it perfectly every single time, it's not how a lot of things are learned. You don't do it perfectly every time. You do molding.
Yeah. And everything grows in iterations too. I was actually literally like a half hour ago, well, more than a half hour ago at this point, talking to a client about Amazon's growth trajectory. This is not an endorsement of Amazon, BT dubs, for or against. It's just a fact. But he didn't know that Amazon started out as a bookseller. He was really surprised. Yeah, they started out just selling books.
Yeah, I remember.
And so I said, yeah, they waited until they could sell books really well, and then they started selling other stuff. And they waited till they could sell books and other stuff really well, and then they started offering more things. And every time they do it, they make sure they can sustain what they're doing before they add on too much stuff that they can't sustain. And this is this idea of like iterating towards perfection. Perfection being in quotes, right? Like, I'm not a big fan of doing things perfectly. I think the messiness is part of what gives it the attractiveness. It's just what draws us in. But I do think that when people try to make life changes, they try to like, I'm going to change my diet, and I'm going to change my exercise routine, and I'm going to change my sleeping routine, and I'm going to start writing that book. And I go, cool, I'll talk to you in a week. And they show up a week later and said, I did great for 4 days, and now I don't want to do any of it. Well, yeah, of course, because you tried to eat the elephant by swallowing it all at once. That's not how this works. You've got to choose one of those things and make the necessary steps to do that one thing and sustain it. And then once you have that sustained, then you go, what do I want to put on top of it? And it's a step-by-step iteration. It works you towards doing it the way you want it to be done, which I suppose is a close enough approximation of perfection for what we're talking about. And again, it's important to remember that even under the best of circumstances, 20% of what you do is going to suck.
Then how do you identify as anything? How do you tell yourself that you're good at anything if 20% of it is going to suck? You say, I'm a dad, and I'm a poor dad. I'm a horrible dad 20% of the time. Shoot. Like, I still want to think of myself as a good dad. Does that mean 51%? Does that mean 80%? Like, how do I qualify being good at anything?
With that one specifically, this is a conversation we can go way more into later. But I tell people in my office all the time, being a good parent does depend on what you do, but it depends way more on doing it consistently. So like if you can only give your kids 5-10 minutes a day because you're working 17 hours and you only get those 5 to 10 minutes, make those 5 to 10 minutes consistently good to the best of your ability. So your kids know what to expect when they come to you. And what that does is it gives them some kind of stability they can stand on, so they know they're not like, if you have a client who you're working with, or a person, if you are a person who sometimes someone tells you bad news and you punch a wall, and sometimes they tell you bad news and you give them a hug, they're not going to tell you bad news because they're not sure which version of you they're going to get.
Oh, that's so scary. I know people who are emotionally unstable like that, and
yeah,
I don't know why. Like, I'm a grown person, they're a grown person, but it's still scary. I kind of hesitate talking to them because I'm like, man, are they gonna get angry? Are they gonna get super happy? It's just never know.
So to answer your question, it's about consistency and trajectory. Are you consistently doing your best to be the same every time, and are you always trying to improve that to the version you want it to be? Like, I'm a good guitar player. Is it because I play amazingly all the time? No. But it's because consistently I do my best, and consistently I get about to where I want to be, so I feel comfortable. And I get good feedback too, right? So it's not like I'm pulling it out of thin air.
Well, yeah, you actually wrote the intro music for this podcast, didn't you?
I did.
That's pretty
cool. I play
cool.
everything on that except for one guitar.
I was just talking with somebody about how, well, this is going on to the tangent. How do you know you're good at something? If you're trying to fight perfectionism, you still want to think that you're good at something with it, and you still want to have some perception of, I need to get better, some self-critique, but it needs to be balanced with, like, I'm good at this, but I could be better. Anyway, how do you feel like you're good at this? I think, especially when it comes to expert status, you cannot give expert to yourself. You said other people mentioned that. And if somebody, well, So basically, if you call yourself an expert, you're negating, I think, you may be, but I take it with a grain of salt. The best experts that I know, at least in school, have been talked about by other professors. Like, oh, you want to talk about trauma? That is Professor so-and-so. They've been doing this for 10 years or 15 years. They are an expert at this.
I feel like it's kind of one of those things as well where it's like anybody who says they're a good person, I'm a good person. I'm a good person. I immediately go like, are you? But if somebody, like, if I met you, Pete, and you said, hi, I'm Pete Kingsley, I'm a good person, I'd be like, But if I met you with a group of friends and someone's like, hey, this is my friend Pete, he's an amazing man.
Yes.
I'd be like, then you're probably a good person because there's somebody on the outside is confirming this to me. And I agree with the idea. My expertness or lack of expertness cannot be self-bestowed.
Yes. This ties into another study from 2024. The name of this was Imposter Syndrome Among First and Continuing Generation College Students, the Roles of Perfectionism and Stress. And they... sorry, okay. How do I blonde?
No, that's more just be like, this is why you're good to do the statistics and why I'm like, I could never do what you're doing.
I'm sure there's some people out there who understood what I just said.
I'm sure there are.
Okay, if you understood... If there's a way to comment on our podcast, translate this. Imposter syndrome.
Make fun of me for not getting it too. Taylor's the idiot. Let's all just agree.
Yeah, it's funny. I was going to say I'm going to tailor this down, but that sounds like I'm calling you a dummy.
Dumbing it down. Yeah. Again, I am blonde.
Okay, so here's the premise of the study. So they got nearly 400 college students, and they tested levels of imposter syndrome as tied to perfectionism and stress. 3 different variables. So what they found, was interestingly, was that the levels of imposter syndrome are similar between first and continuing generation students. You'd think that first generation students are always stressed out and they have a lot of imposter syndrome. I'm not a college student. I'm not really a college student. They'd have more of that than second or third generation college students. But it turns out their levels are similar. The stress is also similar. Some stress about being, quote, the first college student, while others stress about being the first college student to fail in their family. But what you were talking about having external validity was something these authors brought out called socially prescribed perfectionism.
Okay.
The type and level of perfectionism levied by others, that type of expectant perfectionism increases imposter syndrome and increases stress.
I bet there's some really fascinating overlap studies here about how social media plays into exactly that idea.
Oh, yes. Socially prescribed perfection.
You're welcome, Pete.
I think I already got a dissertation I'm working for.
You're 3 weeks in? How do you have a dissertation already?
Because I have a truncated course of study. I got to get in and out in 3 years. So they
have to get your PhD in 3 years?
They shoved everything together because the Air Force only pays for 3 years. So,
holy crap, dude!
Yeah. So wish me luck. Anyway, so I have 1 hour I get to spend with you before I go back to my books.
Oh, wow! Let me know if you ever need me to order you a pizza or something, dude. Holy crap!
That's fine. I will though. You shouldn't have said that. Katie's actually out of town. She's taken my oldest to college this week, so I'm here bacheloring it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. I remembered to take a shower this morning, so that's
anything worth doing well is worth doing poorly. Way to tie it back in, Pete.
Yeah, I didn't use soap, but I took a shower.
So you rinsed.
Yeah,
you didn't wash yourself. You just rinsed off.
I was in a hurry. Anyway, imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome, which is, and I've heard someone explain it as a very ironic contradiction. Because you can have people tell you, you're awesome, you got this, you'll be a first-generation college student, and that's socially prescribed perfectionism, and you're like, I have so much stress. And they say you got this. They say you're smart. They say you got in, you do all these things. Everyone is supportive. And yet you feel stress because you only listen to your voice that says you're an imposter. You're not really a college student. You're faking it. And the contradiction comes in because you are not listening to everyone else who says you are good and you're smart and you can do it. You're only listening to yourself as the authority. And yet you also believe that you're an imposter who is you can't do it. So this contradiction between like, do you believe yourself or do you not believe yourself?
Well, I'm curious, Pete, how would you encourage people to pick the voice they're listening to?
Practice. I would say commonly that power comes in the practice. If I'm meeting with somebody, I have 1 hour a week, like I said, and so I have to give them homework. I say you have to practice this. Some of this is insight, and I get a few light bulbs a month with my patients who are just like, wow, that's true. That is totally me. I love that. I love those moments. And I've had someone say like, do I have a camera in their house? Because I predicted how they lived. And I was like, no, I do not. Anyway, we have insights, but I think most of the work is work. It's actual work. Like if I want you to think positively about your ability to go to college, part of your homework in therapy is going to sit down and I want you to write 3 things a day that you know you're good at. 3 things. And they'll say, oh, it's so dumb. It's so ridiculous. I don't want to do that. It's contrived and forced and everything. I say, yeah, it is contrived and forced because we're trying to force it. Like, it's absolutely right. It is contrived and forced because you're not any good at it right now.
And you say you have a hard time being direct.
I say it more politically correct to them. You know what? I understand. It would be really hard because you're practicing something new.
I really feel that.
Yeah, that would be hard. Well, see you next week.
Well, I think this is another one of my pillars. I'll just pick it up and put this
Go for it.
down right there. People will ask me, how do I change insert thing they want to change? My answer is always the same. I don't know, but whatever it is, it's intentional. It's pretty hard to accidentally be successful at something. Sometimes, yes, you accidentally find something you can use to be successful, like realizing you have a hidden talent or whatever. But success and change never happens accidentally. It's always an intentional thing.
Yes, and it's hard.
If it's self-driven, obviously things can happen outside of your life that you're not intending to have happen that can change you. But if we're talking about personal improvement, self-recovery, et cetera, it's always intentional. It's a choice and it's hard work. This my grandpa once said some of the best advice I ever got. He's like, Taylor, there is no secret to doing hard things. You just do things that are hard.
Oh man, that is cool. And looking back, you think that was super hard. Or if people looking at you will say, man, that was really hard, and you're like, yeah.
So here's my question for you, Pete. So we've talked about understanding this idea of perfectionism. We've talked about the 80-20 rule. What do we do to deal? How do we live with it, right? How do we switch from the 20 to the 80, for example?
From the 20 to the 80. Well, I have heard the phrase that gratitude is the mother of all other virtues, and that there's different ways to approach gratitude. You can have mindfulness, and mindfulness is really looking at the moment. It's not a matter of like finding your Zen. It's basically using all 5 senses to bring yourself into right now. And even though anxiety comes from the future and depression comes from the past, and the only moment we have ever is the one right now. This moment.
Oh, dude!
Right now.
Freaking preach! Another one of my pillars. Go for it. Go for it.
We have this moment right now, and if you can bring yourself to this moment with the clothes you have on touching your skin and the temperature of the room that you feel and the sounds around you, the moments can be pretty good. They're usually pretty good, and we rob ourselves of these moments because our brains are in the future projecting and analyzing threats that don't exist yet. And that's the brain's job. We don't hate our brains for doing that, but we constantly bring ourselves back to this moment. And when we're here, we can feel grateful for these things that we have. I am so grateful to be sitting in this folding chair. I have an antique desk that this laptop is sitting on, and my room is perfect temperature compared to the rest of Tennessee. I'm so, you just feel grateful. So the goodness that surrounds you is usually goodness in a moment. Like right in this moment. When you get good news, you're just like, whoa, and it's that moment is a good moment. It's not like you're living in perpetual happiness in the future. Your brain will continue to your brain will continue to analyze threats. It's the moment that's good when you get good news. So you keep bringing
Absolutely.
So that's what I would say. And you have mindfulness, you have journaling, you would have prayer. I think are all expressions of gratitude in one way or the other.
Yeah, I feel like this is my approach. This is a little different. I'm not a homework therapist at all. I never give homework because I hate homework myself. So why would I do that to somebody else? And that's just the way my brain works. It's not that it's good or bad. It's just how I do it. But with gratitude specifically, I think, okay, well, what am I trying to actually convey to people who I want to be more grateful? Because I don't want them to make things up like, oh, I'm so grateful my foot's broken because it means I can rest. Well, I mean, come on.
Yeah, it has to be real. It has to be something you're really grateful for.
Yeah, and it's not about trying to turn bad things into positive things, right? Like that. Then you start getting to toxic positivity and like, I can't ever feel unhappy with something. I have to always be grateful, and that's just bad.
Joy in Inside Out was toxic positivity.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so I think gratitude is more about recognizing the things that, like, what's the truth of the situation? It's like if I'm homesick, I don't want to be sick. I'm not grateful that I'm sick, but maybe I am grateful to have an excuse not to have to go to work. Maybe I'm grateful for an excuse to just lie in bed, an excuse to watch that TV show I've been wanting to.
I'm so grateful that like I have this job, and last time I was sick was probably 6 or 8 months ago. Like, wow, I'm actually a pretty healthy person. I'm grateful for my body that's so healthy.
Absolutely.
Usually.
And it's not about making a bad situation good. It's just about acknowledging the good things in a bad situation. And that kind of comes down to the next thing that I think is really helpful for switching people from focusing on the 20% that sucks onto the 80 that's good. And we kind of talked about it a little bit before, picking your problems. There's this idea called radical acceptance. And radical acceptance essentially is I accept the situation that I'm in completely. I'm not trying to change it. I'm not trying to redefine it. My situation is what my situation is. So an example would be, I'm afraid of flying. I am now on an airplane. I have to radically accept that no matter what happens, I am in fact on an airplane flying. What do I want to do with that opens up a lot more avenues of possibility and experience.
So is the idea that like the struggle is trying to deny or change the situation? Like you're on an airplane wishing you were on the ground the whole time?
Yeah. Maybe like a more clinical example, because I'm sure everyone loves clinical examples.
Yeah, that's why they're here.
That's right, baby. All two people, you and me being the two.
You can call me baby, that's fine.
That's right, baby. I have a client who justifiably has, well, not, okay, so then let me try that again. I have a client who has been through some pretty bad trauma, like pretty messed up stuff has happened to this person. And they'll say things like, I wish that that never happened to me. And I will say, let's try some radical acceptance. It did happen to you, and nothing will ever change that or take it away. But with that acceptance comes more choice. There's no energy being put trying to push down the, like, this terrible thing happened to me. Like, no, I can't admit that because that means bad things. If you just give yourself permission to accept the truth of the situation, which is bad things did happen to you and you didn't deserve them, now we've accepted that, you can start to build something on top of the terrible.
Well, does that... when it comes to focusing on the 80, you as a person, how does that... I guess you're talking about changing perspective. You're talking about instead of focusing on the 20, this bad, now you're focusing, yes, I accept that, that's fine. Now you're turning towards choices.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you're changing your perspective.
The 80%, the 80 contains so much more that you can do. And again, this isn't about pretending that everything is hunky-dory and great, because that's a terrible idea, like objectively bad idea. But it is to say that once you make space for that 20 and you don't need to try and contain it because it's already contained, it's the 20%. It is what it is. For example, I have on my couch right now a doll, Mr. Meeseeks from Rick and Morty. And if you have watched Rick and Morty, you know that you have a box. You push a button, Mr. Meeseeks shows up. You give him a job, he does it, he explodes and disappears. His entire existence is for a single purpose. He accomplishes that purpose. He ceases to exist. One of the characters in the show gives him a task that he can't accomplish. And he has this line where he says, existence is pain to a Meeseeks. I have Mr. Meeseeks on my couch to remind my clients that existence is pain. And if they are in pain, it means they exist. It doesn't mean they're doing it wrong. That's the acceptance. Once you accept that there's going to be pain and you stop trying to like make the pain go away, there's a lot of nuance to this, but the short version is, if there is a wall in front of me, I need to be on the other side of the wall. I can be mad at the wall, or I can go around the wall and accept the wall's not going anywhere. Life is so much more effective when you can accept the wall for what it is and walk around it instead of trying to go through it. That's the radical acceptance.
But also, people will want to look back, even if you're walking away from it, they'll look back at the wall and be like, I hate that wall.
Yeah, which is fair. That wall might suck.
Yeah, exactly. I think without radical acceptance, it is like, let's working around the wall with their hateful eyes on the wall as they're walking around. It's just like spitting on it and like cursing at it until they're walking away from it, looking back at it, going, you suck, I hate you, I hate you. And you're like, yes, that's fine, but look how far away you are from it.
Yes, let's practice some radical acceptance and focus on the 80, which is that wall that did suck and is now a part of your story is directly behind you.
Yeah. Maybe realizing a lot of people have their own walls, and everyone has their 20.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. It's not proof of failure. There's so much nuance to all this, right? Like, if this is none of this to say, if you can just realize that there's going to be problems, that all goes away. No. That's a bad way of looking at this. But it is to say, it does open up new ways of experiencing the problems where they're no longer proof of failure, right? It's just something to be
like. Yeah, because you can't pretend that the bad things that are happening to you are good, and that's unhealthy. Yeah. And as a therapist, I've heard of therapists doing that, and it's horribly frustrating for the patients, and it doesn't work. So instead of putting rose-colored glasses on everything, you change your seeing of the problem. Your look at the problem changes, and then you can engage in the problem without sabotaging yourself. Or without
absolutely
frustrating yourself. You engage with the problem in a healthier way.
Yeah. This is maybe another smaller pillar, a crown molding around one of my pillars.
Okay.
Wrap it around the bottom there. But we live in a Judeo-Christian society, for better and or for worse. Mm-hmm. And one of the famous Judeo-Christian thought processes is be ye therefore perfect. Right? You hear that a lot in religious. Be ye therefore perfect as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. I mean, if you go back to the original Greek translation, the word I believe is telos, which means complete. It doesn't mean without flaw. And so perfectionism, to be perfect, is to be a whole thing, which you will not be until you're done. Right? About 2 seconds after you die, you will be complete because there's no more to add on. It's done. Which means that perfectionism is not attainable, which we already know, but it's not attainable not because you're making mistakes, but because there's just more you've got to do.
Because you're not done.
You're not finished, baby.
Yeah,
and you are not the baby in this particular instance. I can, Pete, baby.
I had my mail carrier call me baby 2 days ago.
Oh.
It's kind of made me pause, but I reminded myself I'm in the South, and it was okay.
Yeah, and shug.
Shug.
I get shug a lot.
Sugar.
Well, my next door neighbor is a good old girl. She's from Dallas, and she let me hug up on you, Shug. And she's like in her 70s, very sweet lady. She told me one time, she said, Taylor, the good Lord takes care of the drunks and the idiots, and you're halfway there.
Oh my gosh! Oh man, I like this lady. Thank you so much,
Mary.
Yeah, keep her around.
Yes, I will hold off from ending her life, I suppose.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Yeah, I know there's a short list.
So, I mean, just to kind of wrap this all up, the point of all this is that imperfection is not proof of incapacity, and it's not proof of failure. We all have our 20s. You can try and trade them, but they're going to be there.
Yep. And use your 80s to approach your problems, not your 20s.
Yeah, absolutely. You might as well work on enjoying what you got.
Yep. And that works. That applies to so much of your relationships. You work on your strengths. If you're a physical touch love person, if you're a words person, use your strengths for the person that you love. And don't focus on your inadequacies as you approach these things. Don't be so hard on yourself. All the guys that are listening, don't. Focus on your 20s. Anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. You learn bit by bit. You get, I wouldn't say you get better. You would get more complete.
Yeah.
As you go.
And to really just like hammer this point home, what we're not saying is pretend the 20 isn't there. Like don't focus on the 20 doesn't mean don't acknowledge the 20. It means that the 20 is part of the equation, but it's not the solution. Acknowledge it, take it into consideration, and find ways to move around it.
Yes. My sincere hope is that somebody will be able to take some of this and apply it to their specific situation and move forward with it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. But let us
That'd
know
be super great.
if you actually got any value from our podcast.
And if you didn't, let us know. So just
No.
make fun of us so we can read how much we're just terrible.
No, it's fine. Yeah, just if you have something bad to say, keep it to yourself. But we
No, you know what? Actually, I would love to get the negative
Yeah.
if I believe there are ways for people to comment on this based on where they watch it. I would love to get
that any kind of feedback would be welcome. I'm just, a very fragile ego. But if you have I don't know, are you cool with giving out our email address on this thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, emotionalmenpc@gmail.com.
That's right. Write us an email and tell us how cool we are or how awful we are, and we will consider your opinions as valid and reject or take them in.
Absolutely. I will practice radical acceptance with all the emails that I receive.
That's right. I just can't wait to So, Pete, have you read the emails yet? And you're like, yeah, I'm good, man.
That's right. That's right. I don't mind being an emotional man.
Emotions are good. Emotions are a superpower.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm Pete.
I'm Taylor. See you, dude. Good.
Yeah.
Pete. Love you, Pete.
Yeah, I love you too. Bye-bye.